So, I already did a video predicting 20 episodes I think have a chance of happening in Death Battle Season 8, and while I thought most of them were okay matches, I wouldn't call that many of them matches I'd be super hyped for. So I decided to make a season list of these legacy matches that I would actually be completely happy with. And yes, all of these have to fit the criteria of not only being really highly requested, but also being worthy of being a season premiere or finale. So that means no All for One versus the Annihilator, or Doomsday versus Mangog. I decided to follow Season 7's format of animation styles, but replacing the live action fight with another hand-drawn since we definitely aren't getting any live action fights next season, given how Ben said how expensive they are to make. Plus, COVID would make production of them a nightmare. Also, I'll be swapping around Red vs Blue and John Talbane vs Saberwolf in terms of a 3D and sprite fight, because Red vs Blue was originally supposed to come first. Alright, let's go over each match I've chosen, starting with Episode 1, Bill Cipher vs Discord. Already covered this in the prediction video. There's infinite animation potential, not sure who wins, personalities seem like they'd lend to some good banter. Not my favourite Bill match, but I'd still like it. I have this down as a sprite battle because I think they can pull off a change in animation style to hand-drawn, so this is my way of basically cheating and getting another semi-hand-drawn episode. Episode 2, Madara vs Eisen. Naruto episodes have had a mostly good track record in death battles, so I'm down for it. I mentioned in my prediction video that I like Mysterio vs Scarecrow because of the unlimited animation potential their illusions have, and Madara vs Eisen is just a better version of that. They have more potential for hand-to-hand combat, more forms to use in the fight, and these series have only been paired against each other once instead of 22 times already, so I like it even more. I hear the winner is debatable. I'm fine with either of them winning really. I'd probably prefer if Eisen won, since I can't really see Bleach getting another chance to win anytime soon. Whereas Naruto doesn't seem like it's going to go away for the foreseeable future. It seems like it would be a pretty neat sprite fight. Episode 3, Master Hand vs Polygon Man. Another good sprite fight, nothing I can say here again that I didn't already bring up in my prediction video. A final boss fight seems finale worthy, they can have an army battle, please God have Master Core used in some way. Master Hand likely wins. I'm curious to see if they can calc Master Hand flying faster than Smash 4's Final Destination to get a number for his speed. Episode 4, Star Butterfly vs Steven Universe. A really recent Cartoon Network vs Disney rivalry, but it still has enough history to be considered a legacy match from what I can tell. This obviously needs to be hand-drawn, maybe have Steven go into his pink enraged state, have him almost accidentally kill Star, and then he could go into his kaiju state after he sees himself as a monster. I hear Star wins through some universal shit, I've heard a lot of people refute that, so I don't know if she actually does win, but I haven't watched Star vs, and I am a fan of Steven Universe, so I'd root for Steven, I guess. Episode 5, Ant-Man vs the Atom. This should be the Marvel vs DC fight of the season, and yes, I say the Marvel vs DC fight because we do not need more than one. I still love Ego vs Mogo and Combo Man vs Composite Superman, but those are not legacy matches by any stretch. Black Adam vs Apocalypse X-Men Marvel Comics would be funny, but I would still hate it, and while I do still like Mysterio vs Scarecrow more, Madara vs Eisen has the illusion match covered already. Ant-Man vs Atom can play around with size changing. You can have a kaiju fight, small fight, and then have them go down to the atomic level, bashing each other over the head with electrons. The loser obviously has to shrink inside of the other and expand, blowing them up from the inside. If Ant-Man wins, then he could shrink inside Atom's ass because, haha, funny MCU reference, and then have Ant-Man grow back to kaiju size to explode him from the inside. And if Atom wins, well, that would be damn unfortunate because I do like Ant-Man quite a bit more. Episode 6, Cole Mcgrath vs Alex Mercer. A modern day video game legacy match that surprised me with the verdict. I assumed Cole wouldn't be able to outmatch Alex surviving a nuke, but nope, the common belief is that he does, by a very wide margin. This is one I think is almost guaranteed to happen, and both characters have a lot of veritable versatility to make the animation more exciting. You can have Alex consume civilians in the background to gain power, or even swap bodies to keep Cole on his toes. You can have Alex form a sword to clash with Cole's gigawatt blades. You can have a really brutal death where Cole fries Alex inside and out. There's a lot of potential here, and I hope they live up to it. Also have it in 3D because why wouldn't you? Episode 7, Geese Howard vs Hihachi Mishima. Nothing for me to say here since I barely know these characters. This just seems like it could be a neat sprite battle with some fast-paced action and good hand-to-hand choreography. I'd root for Hihachi because I don't want Tekken to go on a losing streak, and I don't want Fatal Fury to go on a ridiculous winning streak of their own. Probably just have it as a sprite match. I see no need for this to be a 3D episode. Episode 8, Gandalf vs Dumbledore. Seems like one that would be best suited for live action, but I've opted to go with one of the SFM slots since they've proven they can handle matches with a lot of abilities rather than matches that have a heavy emphasis on hand-to-hand combat. It's a pretty blatant stomp for Gandalf. This is probably the biggest stomp I have on this list, I want to assume. But I don't doubt that these characters have some fun abilities that could make the fight entertaining. I mean, they both use magic, so I hope they would have a good amount of abilities to use. Give us a clip of Boomstick saying, "You shall not pass," please, I beg of you. Episode 9, Piccolo vs Martian Manhunter. Talked about this one like 3 times before, not much more to say that I haven't said already. It'd be a fun sprite fight. I'd like to see how Piccolo's strategizing and Manhunter's telepathy would play into more interesting choreography. Manhunter stomps more than likely, which is sad since I prefer Piccolo by a lot. Episode 10, Ruby Rose vs Maka Albarn. They are absolutely going to do this. It's the match Ben told Monty Oum he'd do all those years ago, and I think the Legacy season is the time to do it. I know Samus vs Master Chief is the go-to for a Monty Oum tribute, but I would prefer Ruby vs Maka on the grounds that the match isn't trash. If Chief vs Samus did happen though, I wouldn't mind it. As for Ruby vs Maka, I have faith that it wouldn't be rigged for Ruby to win. The Penny City lifting feat is not one that Ruby scales to yet, so Maka should have no problem taking her out, given that Krona, who Maka should scale to, was able to take out a character that they put above Weiss and Yang. I'm not sure how the fight would play out, I'm not that knowledgeable on Soul Eater at all, but I'd hope there could be some good banter in there. This would need to be 3D, there's no other way for it to be done really. The custom sprite jank fit Krona, but I do not think it would do the same for Maka. I want Maka to win so badly just so I can hear Nemesis pop off for it. Episode 11, Kyle Rayner vs Simone the Digger. I have no experience with either character, but this seems like a decent enough match. Lantern fights have some of the most creative potential of any DC Herald fights. Kyle has even referenced Tenga Top and Gurren Lagann before, so maybe we can have a scene where he creates his own Gurren Lagann mech and the two fight each other by throwing galaxies and shit. I know everyone wanted this just because it looked like a DC Herald loss on paper, but now that it's the popular belief that Kyle wins, people don't seem to want it much anymore. It would kill my faith that they'd ever lose if even the most blatantly overpowered anime of all time couldn't win against them, but I still don't mind enough to not want the match at all. This still seems like it could be a really fun, over-the-top fight. This could work as a hand-drawn episode, but I had other fights I wanted more for those slots, so I'll just keep this as a sprite battle. I really hope they would let this go as over the top in the fight as possible. If this is like the last Lantern fight where they barely put a dent in a meteor, then what's even the point of using Gurren Lagann in the first place? Episode 12, Sailor Moon vs Pegasus Seiya. If Beerus vs Galaxia is anything to go off, then I think this could be a really fun and destructive sprite battle. I'm really interested to learn about these characters, and from what I can tell, they're both from really cheesy and campy old anime series, so it could have some fun dialogue too. From what I've been told, Seiya should stat stomp, but Moon has hacks, so I'm not sure who should win. I'd probably prefer if Moon won though. I haven't seen either show, but I don't want Moon to go on a losing streak. And I've always seen Seiya portrayed as this unbeatable deity in verses that needs to be taken down a peg. Much like with Alien X and Archie Sonic. Episode 13, Ghost Rider vs Spawn. From what I can tell, this is one of the most debatable matches on this list. I have no idea who wins. But as long as we get more Zarathos if this happens, then I'm happy. One of the things I'd want most from this episode is a scene where, right out of the gate, Spawn goes for the finisher that he used against Kratos, but Ghost Rider fights back and counterattacks while he still has the blade in his face. That would be a really cool way of showing the absurd level that he's on compared to Kratos. Have it be sprites, I guess. Both have some really good looking sprites, and I feel they could go way more over the top with that. Though I probably wouldn't expect this to go cosmic in terms of the destruction in the animation, since these two aren't super well known for being that over the top and destructive in spite of their immense power. Episode 14, Donald Duck vs Daffy Duck. Yeah, I've talked about this one before. Can't give my thoughts on who wins, you'll have to wait for the multiverse match on this fight to come out first. This would need to be hand-drawn for sure, and the death would need to be really over the top and cartoony. I'd root for Donald since I have more of a connection to him, but I'm content with either winning. I know Mickey vs Bugs is probably more likely, but I'd honestly prefer this. I've always liked these characters more. Plus, it could be a good way to test the waters before they do dive into that fight. Episode 15, Little Mac vs Epo, whose first name I'm not even gonna attempt to pronounce. Don't know who wins, don't really care, just give us the sprite equivalent of Balrog vs TJ and I'm happy. The 1 minute melee version of this fight was already really good, so hopefully they'd be able to improve on it. They better include Doc Lewis during the fight, it would be a waste to not give him lines when they have the chance. Episode 16, Predator vs Arbiter. Nothing I can add that I didn't already say in my prediction video. I think it's a neat match with some good potential. I'm genuinely interested to see how Predator's self-destruct would affect the verdict. I like the idea of this starting as a plasma gun fight before being brought in for a close-range blade fight. Have it in 3D as well, cause why not? Episode 17, Diobrando vs Alucard. Yeah, this one's blatantly confirmed, so I had to include it. And I put it around the slot that seems like it would come closest to Halloween. I hear Dio wins because of something to do with Alucard's strongest form getting rid of his immortality or something like that. Don't know, don't care, didn't ask, boomstick time. Have it be a sprite episode. They both have really good sprites. I hope they could improve upon the aesthetic of the DBX of this fight, I really liked that one. If Dio does win, you gotta have Alucard die for mid-decapitation. I'm sure Nemesis would love that. Episode 18, Ash Ketchum vs Yami Yugi. This is the big one that Nemesis and I didn't mention in our predictions that we both really regret. I know Ash vs Lucy has been a recent request, but the Pokemon vs Yu-Gi-Oh rivalry has existed for ages. Yugi stomps apparently, but I'd still like to see it so that we can get some representation of Pokemon from all different generations. My personal pick for a team would be Pikachu, Charizard, Sceptile, Infernape, Crocodile, and Greninja. I kind of fell off the Pokemon anime after Gen 6, so maybe he got a new Pokemon to replace Crocodile or something in the Alola anime, I don't know. Probably have it as an SFM fight since there were a lot of fun abilities to use and very little reliance on hand-to-hand combat. Actually, I think Ash would win if he got Buizel. Love that guy. If Boomstick says Buizel's name, then this is my new favourite episode by default. Episode 19, Macho Man Randy Savage vs the Kool-Aid Man. I don't know, Chad wants this one and it seems funny? When Ben brings up the concept of the Legacy season, he specifically says,
matchups we've joked about on the show before.
So there's no way this isn't happening. Just have this as a really over-the-top and comedic sprite fight. Maybe have it be a wrestling match too. No clue who wins though. I love that the last few matches have just been a gradual descent from a gritty, serious match to a more silly one to just a full-on shitpost. All leading up to the grand finale, which is of course, Episode 20. Galactus vs Unicron. The big one. The only match that feels right to have as the finale. Nothing else even compares to the history that this match has. A battle between two multiversal entities who tower over celestial bodies, consuming and destroying entire planets on a regular basis. Galactus is a character who's fascinated me for the longest time. He's been one of the coolest Marvel characters in my eyes since I was a kid. And while Unicron isn't a character I have any real connection to, Transformers is a series I like well enough, and he seems cool. This match could be on a scale grander than anything else the show has ever done. You can have them throw planets at each other, ram each other through stars, absorb black holes, destroy universes, just go as over the top as possible. Nemesis tells me Galactus wins, which is good enough for me. This has the potential to be the single greatest episode the show has ever done and ever will do. So there you go, a full hypothetical season list for Death Battle Season 8 that I would personally be really happy with. 36 series total, 18 of which are new, and only half the Marvel and DC of last season. It seems like a lot, but I think they could pull it off. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought of this season list, and if there are any matches that you would change. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time for a very special video coming out on Sunday that definitely does not have anything to do with Hulk vs Broly.